Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff McKay. I'm going to be your host for today as we do this webinar looking at how we can block breaches with secure mail. This is part of a three-part series. It's part one. We're going to look at how and why you should replace some of the other communications methods that you're using in your clinic, and talk about how secure mail does a better job of protecting your clinic, you, and your patient information from modern day risks of privacy breaches. And so let's dig in. We're going to have with us today Rohit Joshi, who is Bright Squid CEO, who has a long career working in compliance and the legal aspects. So Rohit is a lawyer, spends a lot of time working to understand all the intricacies of privacy regulations. When we look at what makes secure mail compliant, there are over 600 line items, and we'll get to that, that do that compliance. And Mark Ayer, who is the Director of Customer Operations. So Mark works very closely with the team that supports all of our users in being compliant, understanding the technology and how best to use it. Today we're going to look at sort of what is email, what are the risks around fax, and the risks around mail. We'll look at why secure mail is important, what you can get out of it, and the protections that secure mail delivers, as well as some of the features that help you be compliant, but also the features that are built around the clinical application that email doesn't give you. And then we'll do a demonstration of secure mail as well, so you get a sense of sort of how it works. I noticed there are some people on the call today that haven't used it. Everybody here has a secure mail account in some capacity. Whether you're a full subscriber or a free user, you can always use secure mail to receive messages. Even free users, if you haven't decided to upgrade your account yet, you can send messages in place of sending email, and we'll help you understand why it is a lot of clinics are only accepting messages inbound through their secure mail account. So even as a free user, you're able to just tell everyone, hey, just send it to my secure mail because it's safer. So let me bring Rohit and Mark in here, but before I do that, I do just want to say a couple things. We will take questions, so if you have any questions, there's a questions tab over in your GoToWebinar control panel over on the right of your screen. You can type them in there at any time. We'll do our best to get to all the questions at the end. If we don't have time, because we do like to keep this in a tight window so we know everybody can get back to their day, we'll do our best to reach out with answers to any questions that don't get addressed. So I'm just going to switch things over here and bring Mark and Rohit on board, and we'll get going with the presentation. So let's get started by looking at what is email. I'll turn everything over to Mark and Rohit now to go through this and the rest of the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. So as you were saying, what is email? And a lot of us don't think about how email works or what it does for us. A lot of us would be surprised to learn it's been around for almost 35 years. It was invented in the 1970s by a 14-year-old, if you can believe it. And email, when it was designed, was never built or intended to be a secure or a private way to communicate. And so the way data transmits through email today is, as we can see on the screen here, a message is composed on your computer, and then it effectively gets uploaded onto the internet and finds its way through an unpredictable path from your computer to your recipient's computer. And it's that unpredictable path in the middle that introduces so much insecurity and uncertainty about what happens to information sent through traditional old-fashioned email. And that's very problematic from a security and a compliance standpoint.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things too. I think when we look at, I should have introduced myself. This is Rohit here. I think as part of the other challenge we have with email is that it doesn't comply to a number of the other regulations that are required from a proper health technology, including the auditability, including the ability to retrieve information and otherwise. So maybe just go to the next slide, Jeff, and we'll kind of pick it up from there.
Yeah, I just want to mention real quick before we do, depending on how you're using email, a lot of people will fall back on or rely on or receive a recommendation from somebody that they should use encrypted email. And when you look at this path, over on the left, you might be sending an encrypted email using an encrypted email service, but over on the right, the recipient's email service may not be able to receive that, and it may end up getting delivered unencrypted anyway. So it's not just about encryption. There's a whole lot of other stuff that we can get into.
This is down a rabbit hole for us. There's about 600 line items that we manage to our compliance in order to make it HIPAA compliant in the U.S. and comply with the Canadian laws. We manage about 600 different controls. Encryption is actually on 2 line items out of those 600. It's the smallest part of really what controls the healthcare technology. We're probably going into too much detail for this half hour.
Right. So as we were just saying on the previous slide, email is risky and dangerous for a number of reasons that Rohit has alluded to. In recent times, email has become the #1 way that ransomware and other harmful software gets into a medical clinic. We talked about it being not safe or compliant, and seems to be the way that practices are exposing data accidentally. Incoming email is enticing to click on. Staff in your office are expected as part of their job to open up incoming emails. And when they open up those emails and see a link that says click here to view the results of your recent shipping activity, or click here for a refund for your recent Amazon returns, those sorts of clicks that seem so innocuous can very quickly lead to ransomware, phishing attacks, and those sorts of things happen very, very quickly. And before you know it, you're managing a full-blown data breach.
I think just a couple of things on this. We used to have a 1-hour presentation that we used to give where we used to go over ransomware example after ransomware example, and let us know if you're interested in seeing those. And what we'll show you during one of those sessions is email after email that in a large part is indistinguishable from normal emails that you might get from a Dropbox or from Amazon or from FedEx or any of the above. It's really difficult to tell. So the way ransomware works is, as soon as you click on a link, and that link might say something as simple as update your address. As soon as you click on that link, it will in the background download the piece of software that we call ransomware that essentially will lock up your computer and every other computer on your network. And until you pay the ransom, which the numbers that we've got from clinics that we've heard about in our local market are between $3,000 and $60,000, depending on how much data they've captured. They won't unlock that data back to you until you've paid them that ransom. So that's sort of what ends up happening. And like I said, we know over a dozen practices that are close to us, and now are customers of ours, but they didn't contact us sooner.
I think just the other thing to mention along the lines of ransomware, there was a study done early this year, sort of doing the cybersecurity landscape of 2019. 60% of businesses polled had at least had an attempted ransomware attack, and so it's quite more prevalent than I think people want to let on.
Yeah, and these attacks have gotten far more sophisticated. I mean, we all remember we all joke about the old Nigerian prince scams of the mid-2000s. These hackers have gotten far more sophisticated now, and you don't expect these attacks to be coming as often as they are.
Yeah, well, and the big change in ransomware in the last year has been, rather than just purely locking up your data and giving it back if you pay the ransom, the threat is, if you don't pay the ransom, we will release the information on the internet. So for clinics, obviously, that's a huge risk. You can't just fire up your backup and keep going. That information has been taken and potentially could be breached.
Right, and this is the last quick point before we move on is patients are not able to absolve you of your responsibility to their information. And this is something I deal with from a customer service standpoint all the time, is I'll have a client say to me, my patient has told me, they've demanded that I email their information, and I still refuse to do it because I know as a clinician that's dangerous, despite the patient, trying to take on that responsibility. Ultimately, it's always the clinician who's responsible, and any sort of protestations in the other direction don't change that responsibility.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I've got one last thing to say. There was a recent breach in Alberta where there were where the clinician was doing the right thing. The physician was communicating and wanted to communicate with their patients. Unfortunately, he was using the wrong technology. He was using Gmail. And what happened was every single patient said, yeah, sure, yeah, just send that to me on my Gmail or send it to me on my email address. What they didn't consent to, and ultimately what happened in this story, was that physician clicked on ransomware. And what happened when that physician clicked on ransomware was the personal information of 7,000 patients was captured by that clinician and pulled back for ransomware. So when we want to talk about breach, it's not necessarily even a patient that's going to be the issue. It's the fact that the clinician may click on something which ultimately releases all that data to everybody who shouldn't have it.
So let's move on to fax. Fax is widely used in medical clinics all over the world. Medical practices seem to be one of the last bastions or last footholds for fax technology. And the simple fact is it's not a compliant technology. It's not encrypted and they're unreliable. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to know for certain that a fax that you send actually got through to the individual that you'd intended to send it to. A fax machine spits out a piece of paper in a different building, in a different city or a different country from where it started from, and there's no way to know for sure that it got to the right person. Now, there's a graphic on this slide that talks about bad guys or hackers taking over fax machines. Rod, I think I'll let you talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, it's an interesting, a couple of years ago, this hack was released, which basically allowed a hacker with a fax phone number to not only log into that fax machine, but actually log then into the network, the entire network, because most fax machines now are also connected to the network, playing double duty, if you will, as a printer. So in order to do that, you're connected to the network. And ultimately, they're trying to patch this, but we know that there's millions of these fax machines still out there that are vulnerable to this hack. I think, Mark, just to kind of follow up on one of your points, the fax technology itself isn't compliant. In order to make it compliant, there's a whole bunch of processes that you have to do in order to make sure that that fax has been received. It's been grandfathered into the legislation, but the privacy guys like us, when you look at the privacy legislation, if a fax machine was introduced today, there is absolutely no way that it would pass the privacy muster that's being applied. So it's kind of unique to us. It remains a curiosity.
Yeah, and lastly, if you do send a fax and you misdial a number, there's no getting that back. You can't unsend a fax. So if you make a mistake or your speed dials get mixed up, accidents happen, and it's just another dangerous situation.
I mean, it's easy to find cases of that all over the internet of people, clinics misdialing faxes for years.
Yeah, there was a really famous one in Saskatchewan a couple of years ago where it was actually like an IT firm that was getting faxes that were meant for a clinic, and the IT firm had to go above and beyond to report this back to the healthcare board in that particular province to finally get the faxes to stop. It was irritating for him, and he felt it was an ethical responsibility, thankfully.
Yeah.
And lastly, mail. Old-fashioned snail mail, lick-a-stamp mail, whatever you want to call it. It's extremely expensive and extremely slow. You don't think about mail as being expensive because it's kind of built into the sunk cost of running your operations. But just stop and take a moment to think about it. Every letter that you send is going to be at least $1 for the stamp or whatever stamps cost now. I don't mean to sound disconnected, but I don't know what stamps cost. I'm sorry. But the cost of the stamp is one thing, the cost of the paper, the printer ink is another, and the cost to your staff to fold up that paper and stick it in an envelope and then get it into the hands of the postman, all of that is time and money. Not to mention that any letter you send, even if it's going across the street in a major city, is going to take a full day, if not two, to get there. It's a slow way to get there, and after you do send it, you have no confirmation that it actually got there. We never know for sure if mail is delivered. You can register your mail, but that's an additional cost above and beyond what I've already talked about. And then finally, the last thing that I'll talk about is that mail is unprotected. Someone can come across that mail either in a mailbox or in a public location. And while it's illegal for them to tear it open and look at it, it's also illegal for them to break into your email, but they're already doing that. So mail is not a protected system because there's no access. So let's talk now a little bit about secure mail. So the Bright Squid Secure Mail service was purpose-built from the ground up around the requirements of the medical establishment. So Rowan talked about HIPAA compliance, the various compliance regulations in Canada and other countries, and it's designed to be an encrypted channel that moves data in a way that's compliant. And that includes a message and attachments, photos, x-rays, PDF documents, all that stuff that you need to send either to another doctor, to a lab, to an insurance person, or most importantly, directly to a patient, can go through the secure mail service. As a subscriber, you can send messages to anyone in the world, and that recipient will be able to receive that at no charge. It's very important to us that the recipients are able to receive information quickly, easily, and frictionlessly so that they can get whatever's been sent to them. Roy, did you want to add anything?
No, I just, I think, Mark, you said it all in the sense that we're starting to see a great deal of traction around this because it is safe, it's compliant, once you send it, you can audit the sent transaction to make sure that you can see if that individual's opened it. And going back to your mail discussion, Mark, I can't tell you how frustrating it has been for me in the past to, find a pile of mail at home and see that there may have been something critical in there. There's no way to filter important information, I guess, acting.
Exactly.
But not with secure mail.
So this here is a quick rundown of some of the features within the secure mail service, and I'll show you as many of these as I can in a live demo here in just a moment. Compliance I already talked about. Message recall. Any message that you send through Bright Squid Secure Mail can be recalled back from the recipient. So if you accidentally address a message to Mary instead of Mark, you can pull that back, the body of the message, any attachments, so the recipient can't access that information. Combine that with the read receipt right below there, I can determine whether or not the wrong recipient has read the message and immediately withdraw it back. Now that being said, even if the message has been read, I can still recall it, and that minimizes harm to another level. The shared inbox is used by an entire practice to receive and manage incoming messages. So if a message is sent to Dr. Smith and he's unavailable, the shared inbox picks it up and makes it available to other staff members. We have a directory of verified users around the world, so you can search and find secure mail users within your local jurisdiction that you want to communicate with. And as I mentioned right off the top, anyone can be invited to use secure mail and are invited to use a free account to receive messages from another medical professional. So let's switch over now to the screen broadcast on my side, and I'll just run through a quick demo. I realize we're running short on time because we spent so much time in the email rabbit hole, as Rowan called it. But I want to show you what the service actually looks like and how it's so familiar and similar to traditional email.
Okay, Mark, we'll switch over to you. Mark will accept here, and we'll go ahead with the demo.
All right, so my screen should be broadcasting for you now. And so now you're seeing my web browser, and I'm about to log into my Secure Mail account. You'll notice that I'm doing it through my web browser. Secure Mail is an entirely web-based application, so there's no software to download, install, or maintain, and you can access it from any device that's connected to the internet. I'm on a Windows 10 computer. Feel free to use Mac, iPhones, iPads, Android devices. As long as you're connected to the internet and have a web browser, you can log into. So I'll log in now as a pretend made-up doctor named Pierre Fauchard. So his username and password is already entered. I go ahead and log in. And this is where I find myself now at my Secure Mail inbox, which, as you can see, looks much like traditional email. So on the left-hand side, I have the various controls we're already familiar with, my inbox, my shared inbox, drafts, sent folder, and all that good stuff. In the middle are messages that I've received recently, and I've selected this message that I received a few weeks ago. That includes some generic kind of made-up demonstration information, including an attachment here in the form of a Word document. So more interestingly is, how do I send stuff to other people? So again, falling back on my email analogy, up here in the top right-hand corner is the compose button. And I can now compose a message and begin addressing it to anyone that I choose. Now, broadly speaking, there's two kinds of people in the world, those that have secure mail accounts and those that don't. So if I type in the email address or contact information of one of my existing colleagues, just like with email, he pops up here in my autocomplete and I can select him as my addressee. Now, furthermore, I can address it to someone who doesn't have secure mail. Now, any email address in the world will do. I'm going to use this one here, which is testuser@brightsquid.com, but it can be any email address. And when I entered that email address, no match is found. This email address is not registered in secure mail. It could be a Hotmail account or an AOL account or abcdental.com. Once I've put that in, I can now invite testuser to become a secure mail collaborator. Looks like I invited this fellow earlier today, but they still haven't signed up. That's just fine. I can still send him a message. So now I can just go ahead and compose the rest of my message. So I'll just call subject line test. Here is information. I apologize for the typos. Whenever I'm in front of a crowd, I make mistakes. There we go. I'll just fix that. And then I can attach any files that I want to send as well. Now, I talked before about photos and x-rays, but really just about any file that you can imagine can be uploaded and sent through secure mail. So I'm going to select, in this case, an x-ray and a photograph of some fellow here getting an implant, and we'll attach those to the outgoing message. Now, I can also attach really, really big files. In this example, I'm just keeping it simple with 2 photographs, and I can now send that off. So now what happens when I click on send is an email is deployed to both Dr. Rontgen, my existing collaborator, and test user at BrightSquid, a new person who hasn't used secure mail before. Both of them will get an email to their regular old-fashioned email inbox that, it's important to note, does not include the patient information. That notification that comes to their regular old-fashioned email effectively just says, hey, Dr. Fauchard has sent you something, click here to see it. And they will then be prompted to either log into their existing account, or if, when it's appropriate, click here and they'll be able to create their free account so they can receive that message that I've just sent them. Now, I can quickly switch over to my sent box here and show you how that's going to look on their side. And this allows me to demonstrate a couple of interesting points. So this is the message that I just sent. And we can see that neither of the recipients have read the message yet. This little orange box next to their name indicates that it's an unread message. By contrast, if I look at a message that I sent a couple of days ago to a different doctor, this message has been read. Dr. Stilgar read this message. I can even see exactly when he read it. So I know that these 5 files that were shared with him, these photos, this PowerPoint, and this PDF document, all of these messages, all of these attachments, I should say, were received and read by Dr. Stilgar back on January the 23rd. And by contrast, this other one still is unread. So what this allows me to do, I talked about this earlier in the slides, is I can now recall the message if for whatever reason I don't want Dr. Rontgen to have access to these files. I can recall them and they'll be pulled out of his inbox so he can't view or download any of this information. All of this happens within our secure mail environment. All of this data that we're moving around moves within a compliant environment, so that does include encryption. It includes the audit trail. It includes chain of custody management. All of those difficult things that Rohit talked about in those 600 lines of compliance documentation are covered within the communication of this data. So I think I'll turn it back over to Jeff now, and we'll finish up with the last couple of slides. If you want to go ahead and yank that screen broadcast back from me now. There we go.
The power. So thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rohit. I think before we wrap things up here, we have a couple of questions that we want to address here that have come in. So a couple about secure mail, a couple about some of the things we talked about. The first question I think we didn't address going through is, what about eFax? Is eFax considered safer or more compliant than a regular old fax machine?
There's a few things that it does right. You don't have the same concerns about it ending up on the floor of the fax, wherever the fax machine is. So you don't have to worry so much about it running out. The problem that we've seen in eFax in the real world is there still is no confirmation that's reliable that it has been received. So we've been in clinics where, the server has gone down. A successful message sent has been actually provided to the sender, but in fact, the server itself did not receive it. And so hundreds of faxes have gone missing and are unrecoverable because there's no secondary or backup storage. So it still lacks from a completely compliance perspective. It handles the toner being out, the paper being out, the paper falling away, handles that. But after that, it's not a great system for a lot of the reasons we've talked about.
Great. And then how many patients can a user invite?
As a subscriber, you can invite as many patients as you need to. We don't limit the amount of interactiveness you can have through Secure Mail, so you can invite all of your patients, all of your collaborators, and that's just fine.
Yeah, great. And then one last question before we move on to the wrap-up. What about file sharing? How big can attachments be?
Oh, right. I kind of glossed over that in the demo, and I said really, really big files. Just to specify, you can upload and send files as large as 500 megabytes in size. So Secure Mail very much fills the role as the file transfer device. So things like CT scans and other large diagnostic images can be uploaded and sent through Secure Mail in much the same fashion that I showed when I uploaded the photos and x-rays earlier.
Great. And then I guess as a follow-up to that, are there limits? Do we have storage limits? I know some services will, you've got to clean out your Outlook. You've got to do all this other stuff.
No, that's one of the other failings of regular email that I didn't talk about, is that it was never really designed for those kinds of big files. So with Secure Mail, we don't limit you on the number of messages you can send or the number of attachments that can be sent and stored within our system. So all the messages that we do send are archived in your sent folder, and you can review back to them later on.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, Mark and Rohit. We'll just move on to the quick wrap-up. I appreciate your time. Any other questions we didn't get to, we will try to address in the next few days individually. So now let's look at the winners of the draw. So we have, for the most secure messages sent, congratulations to Annette for winning. We'll send out a $25 gift card. Most Secure Mail invites goes out to Gina. So great work there, getting more clinics and patients on the system so that you can communicate with everybody you need to. And then for showing up today, Raymond T gets the award for that. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Let's keep your practice protected. If you have any questions about how to use Secure Mail, how to get it set up in your clinic, as a Secure Mail user of any sort, you always have access to our support team. So give Mark and his team a call. They're there to help you out. Our support portal, we're adding new sort of use cases. There's video tutorials there if you want to see more about how to add users, how to use message recall, how to use read receipts in your shared inbox. All that kind of stuff is up on the support portal, so you can do some more digging and learning, but we are always here to help you out. You can complete sort of a brief privacy risk assessment through our website. If you just go to our homepage and scroll down a little bit, there's a button that'll take you to do your privacy risk assessment. We'll give you a score for that, and then you can work with one of our onboarding reps to help look at ways that we can get your score up so that we are blocking as many breaches as we can and make sure that we're keeping your patient information safe. So thank you for tuning in today. We really appreciate your attendance and your thoughts around keeping your patient information safe and preventing breaches in your clinic.